In just 13 minutes, uncover 10 explosive takeaways from Piers Morgan on Triggernometry, from the one mistake that turned the world against Israel to indiscriminate bombing and blocking journalists from Gaza, and in Britain, migrant hotel protests, far-right influence, and weak political leadership. Takeaway 1. The one mistake that turned the world against Israel. Piers Morgan explained that after the October 7th Hamas attacks, he strongly supported Israel's right to defend itself. He described the attack as one of the most shocking events he had reported, with over 1,000 Israelis killed and many hostages taken. In those first days, most of the world backed Israel, seeing the war as justified self-defense. Over time, however, he said Israel made a huge mistake that began to turn global opinion. The strategy shifted from targeted military action to what he described as rage-driven, large-scale bombing that destroyed over 70% of Gaza and killed tens of thousands of civilians, including many children. He argued that this level of destruction went far beyond the stated goals of defeating Hamas and freeing hostages. He said the approach was not only morally questionable, but also strategically foolish because it created more enemies than it eliminated. Morgan compared it to the Iraq War, where initial public support collapsed when people saw the civilian toll. He also said for every Hamas member killed, several more were being recruited out of anger. He believes Hamas planned for this by drawing Israel into an emotional overreaction. He pointed out that even pro-Israel voices who were vocal at the start have grown quiet because they can no longer defend the scale of destruction. He stressed that this one major strategic and moral misstep has damaged Israel's reputation, weakened its global support, and made Jews less safe around the world. For example, he noted how in past conflicts like Kosovo, careful targeting was used to avoid civilian deaths, and when that discipline was lost, public support quickly faded. Now let's move to the next takeaway. Takeaway 2, shift from support to criticism of Israel's war strategy. Morgan said he had no problem defending Israel's right to act after October 7th, but believes the way the war has been conducted has failed. He said the original aims of removing Hamas and rescuing hostages have not been met. Instead, the civilian death toll has soared, with reports that 2/3 of the dead are non-combatants. He said Israel's government has fallen into a trap, turning the war into a long campaign that breeds hatred. He pointed out that the Israeli military has been capable of precise and surgical strikes in the past, such as against Hezbollah and Iranian nuclear targets, without causing massive civilian casualties. He questioned why those methods were not used here. He argued that this change in approach has cost Israel the moral high ground it held at the start. He also believes the war has become a political tool for Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, who has no incentive to end it while it keeps him in power. He said this war will leave a stain on Israel's image for years. For example, he reminded that in the Falklands War, swift and targeted action helped maintain international support, whereas prolonged campaigns often do the opposite. Now let's move to the next takeaway. Takeaway 3, the problem of indiscriminate bombing. Morgan frequently used the term indiscriminate bombing to describe Israel's current tactics in Gaza. He questioned the logic of destroying entire buildings and killing dozens of civilians to target one suspected Hamas fighter. He said such actions show reckless disregard for civilian lives and erode any claim of proportionality in warfare. He compared the tonnage of bombs dropped on Gaza to the combined power of the atomic bombs dropped on Japan, saying this scale alone raises moral and strategic concerns. He acknowledged that Hamas hides among civilians, but argued that as a democracy, Israel has a higher duty to avoid civilian deaths. He pointed out that Israel managed to fight Hezbollah without flattening Lebanon in the same way. He also challenged explanations that most destruction is due to booby traps, saying that does not account for all the damage. He said the result is growing hostility toward Israel across the world. He warned that killing thousands of children will only ensure long-term bitterness. For example, he recalled that the Allied bombing of Dresden during World War II is still debated as a moral failure, despite the overall cause being considered just. Now let's move to the next takeaway. Takeaway 4, blocking journalists from Gaza. Morgan strongly criticized Israel's decision to block foreign journalists from entering Gaza. He called this a first in modern warfare and said it prevents independent verification of events. He argued that the official claim of protecting reporters is not credible, given that over 250 Palestinian journalists have already been killed. He believes the real motive is to control the narrative and hide potential war crimes. He compared this to past conflicts where reporters were allowed in despite risks, such as in Vietnam, where press coverage changed public opinion. He said allowing only pro-government reporters embedded with the military is not real journalism. He stressed that independent coverage could confirm or disprove claims from both sides and that refusing access makes Israel look like it has something to hide. He predicted that this secrecy will damage Israel's reputation long after the war ends. He said if there is nothing to conceal, there should be no fear of press scrutiny. For example, he reminded that graphic coverage from Somalia in the 1990s shifted U.S. policy after showing the human cost of intervention. Now let's move to the next takeaway. Takeaway 5, extremism on both sides of the conflict. Morgan said peace is blocked not only by Hamas's Islamic fundamentalism, but also by extremist voices in the Israeli government. He noted that some senior ministers openly speak about removing all Palestinians from Gaza, which he called a war crime. He said Hamas's willingness to put civilians in harm's way is equally inhumane. He argued that these extreme beliefs are mirror images of each other and make compromise nearly impossible. He believes new leadership on both sides is the only way forward. He said extremists justify their actions as fulfilling a divine right, which closes the door to negotiation. He also warned that wars tend to strengthen extreme voices, drowning out moderates. He compared this to the ethnic cleansing in the Balkans, which only ended when outside powers forced talks. He stressed that letting hardliners dominate will guarantee endless bloodshed. For example, he said he has met Israelis and Palestinians living peacefully together in mixed cities, proving coexistence is possible without extremist politics. We're halfway through the video. Thanks for sticking with us. If you're enjoying it, hit the thumbs up and share it in your WhatsApp groups. If you'd like to support us, please tap the thanks button below. It helps us keep making great content. Drop a comment and don't forget to hit subscribe for more. Now let's continue with the video. Takeaway 6, paths toward a political solution. Morgan said that lasting peace will only come through a political settlement, with a two-state solution as the end goal. This would require new leadership in both Israel and Palestine and active participation from Arab states such as Saudi Arabia, Egypt, and Jordan. He pointed to the Northern Ireland peace process as proof that even deep conflicts can be resolved when fresh leadership and strong mediators step in. He suggested that rebuilding Gaza should be a joint effort between the United States and Arab partners, but Hamas must be excluded from political power. He called for Palestinian elections that can produce leaders willing to pursue peace. He also said that illegal land grabs by settlers in the West Bank must be stopped. He stressed that both peoples must see equal human rights as non-negotiable. He acknowledged that breaking cycles of revenge is difficult, but history shows it is possible. He gave the example of Nelson Mandela choosing reconciliation over vengeance, which transformed South Africa's future. Now let's move to the next takeaway. Takeaway 7, growing protests over migrant hotels. In the UK, Morgan spoke about the increasing protests outside hotels housing illegal migrants. He said these protests are driven by a mix of resentment over resources and fear for community safety. He noted that the protests are happening in wealthy areas as well as poorer ones, showing that this is not limited to one social class. He said the slow pace of asylum processing leaves people in limbo and fuels public frustration. He also warned that ignoring these concerns risks pushing ordinary citizens toward extremist groups. He pointed out that protest signs often say, "I am not far right, I just care about my children," reflecting genuine worries rather than organized extremism. He believes the government's failure to control the borders is at the heart of the problem. He said lessons can be learned from other countries where immigration issues have shaped major elections. For example, he said in the United States, border security concerns have been decisive in winning or losing presidential races. Now let's move to the next takeaway. Takeaway 8, the government's immigration failures. Morgan said that despite repeated promises, the UK government has failed to reduce illegal immigration. He criticized the lack of results from giving France over £500 million to stop small boat crossings. He argued that the only effective way to stop them is before they leave the French coast. He suggested using heavy tariffs on French goods to force action, comparing it to Donald Trump's pressure on Mexico, which reduced illegal crossings. He said once the boats are at sea, stopping them without risking lives becomes much harder. He believes many arrivals are economic migrants rather than genuine asylum seekers. He also criticized the slow processing of asylum claims, which keeps tensions high. He argued that the current system encourages more people to attempt the crossing. For example, he said other countries have reduced illegal entries by tightening rules on asylum applications made after illegal entry, which could be applied in Britain. Now let's move to the next takeaway. Takeaway 9, Tommy Robinson and the far-right narrative. Morgan discussed the rise in support for Tommy Robinson, saying it is partly due to public frustration with the government's handling of immigration. He acknowledged that Robinson was correct in highlighting the grooming gang scandals, but criticized him for violence, fraud, and spreading lies. He said Robinson's self-image as a silenced truth-teller is misleading, and that his actions, such as contempt of court, have harmed his credibility. He warned that unrest over immigration is giving far-right figures more influence, and that mainstream politicians must address these issues to stop that growth. He also noted that extremists gain traction during times of chaos and government failure. He said ignoring public anger will only push people toward more radical voices. For example, he compared this to how certain fringe figures in the United States became mainstream when public fears on immigration and crime were left unanswered. Now let's move to the last takeaway. Takeaway 10, weak political leadership in Britain. Morgan criticized Keir Starmer's government for lacking a clear plan and constantly changing direction. He said Labour has made promises it cannot realistically keep, such as building 1.5 million homes in a single term. He argued that U-turns damage trust and make the government look unsure of itself. He also opposed Labour's plan to tax private schools, saying it punishes families who work hard to give their children better opportunities. He believes this is based on envy and will lead to overcrowding in state schools, just as it did in Greece. He contrasted this with leaders who set a course and stick to it even under pressure. He said Starmer should learn from past leaders like Tony Blair, who entered office with a clear agenda, and from figures like Rudy Giuliani, who tackled crime in New York with consistent policies. He said the weak handling of immigration is part of a larger pattern of indecisive leadership. For example, he said that when governments start their term by warning things will get worse, they risk losing public confidence before they have a chance to act. Thank you for watching. If you'd like to support this channel, hit the thanks button below. It really helps us keep going. If you enjoyed this summary, please leave a like and share it in your WhatsApp groups. To join discussion about this video, drop a comment below. And for more videos like this, hit the subscribe button below.